I'd like to take a little time and read to you from a very nice book assembled by Richard Kostelanetz. He went through all of the published interviews with John Cage and assembled all of the answers by topic area. So this is from a book called Conversing with Cage. I highly recommend it if you're interested in John Cage's thought. And I'm going to read an excerpt here from a number of different interviews back to back on listening. I was just in San Francisco, and then I went to Santa Cruz to see my friend Norman O. Brown, who has written those beautiful books, Life Against Death and Love's Body, and we had very interesting conversations. And that thing that Jesus said in the New Testament came up, about considering the lilies, which is a kind of silence. But now we know, through science, that the lilies are extremely busy. We could say that Jesus was not thinking scientifically, or not thinking microscopically or electronically, but then we could agree with him, because the work of the lilies is not to do something other than themselves. In other words, it is not production of something else. It is rather reproduction of themselves. And that perhaps is the proper work for us all. And that, I think, could bring us back to silence, because silence is also not silent. It's full of activities. I remember being with an older composer who was concerned about my use of the word nature in connection with my explanation of musical ideas. He said he'd always thought of nature as something that should be gardened, controlled, so that aspects of it that were uncomfortable could be removed, so that one could escape being bitten. Progress may be the idea of dominating nature, but in the arts, it may be listening to nature. In the 40s, I conceived the idea of a piece with no sounds in it, but I thought it would be incomprehensible in the European context. 5 years later, I was inspired to do it by seeing the paintings of Robert Rauschenberg, one of which was a canvas with no paint on it. Charles Ives wrote a romantic essay about sitting in a rocking chair on the front porch, looking out towards the mountains, quote, listening to your own symphony. I once went to a Quaker meeting with silence and found myself thinking of what I should say, that is, how to dominate the meeting, Faustian. And then I realized that was not the point, not to dominate, but to listen, and to listen to silence. By silence, I mean the multiplicity of activity that constantly surrounds us. We call it silence because it is free of our activity. It does not correspond to ideas of order or expressive feeling. They lead to order and expression, but when they do, it deafens us to the sounds themselves. Thoreau said that we should simplify, but this is the experience of hearing, something that can't be simplified. And I think it's surely the same way with seeing. But perhaps hearing is even more complicated than seeing, because it happens all the way around you. You only see, so to speak, what is in front of you. But you hear all the way around. This is, of course, what I like most about experience, whether it's seeing or hearing. Its unpredictability. And I found it less interesting when I knew perfectly well what I was hearing. Even hearing what I am saying now is less interesting than my being quiet, listening. It's doubly less interesting when I'm talking with someone and answering, say, a question or making some remark, so that I could go back to listening as to a source. But what's so beautiful about this kind of situation is that it's not focused, it's not directed, it's not pushing. Even when the striking percussive sounds come, like opening this box, and the stapling machine, the sound of laughing, it's no sooner laughed than done, so that your hearing goes on as freely after even a very striking sound, as freely after as before, and that's the kind of situation that is so rare in so-called music. When I say so-called music, I mean music, because there everything is underlined, and you're taken like a criminal in a truck to a climax.